With the launch of the Switch 2 out of the way, and many of the first impressions coming in at the tune of, yeah, it feels like a stronger Switch 2, it seems like a lot of people that are very overconfident have already started to share their beliefs that the Nintendo Switch 2 is the best-selling opening launch of any console in history. Now, for what it's worth, I've said on multiple occasions that I believe that the Switch 2 might actually have one of the biggest launches of all time, as far as numbers sold is concerned, at least. It just made the most sense to me because we live in a post-pandemic world filled with scalpers, bots, and just people with the buy now and complain later attitude. My observations throughout the launch have kind of been more of a question if that is actually the case. And this is primarily because so many different people are saying they're still seeing Switch 2s available. I can confirm that as late as Saturday night following the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, I picked up the phone, called a few GameStops in DC, and they told me one specific location has tons of Switches available. When I asked some of my friends about that particular location, they kind of had a reaction like, yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable in that part of town with a new console in my hand walking from the store to the car. Which obviously is a whole different social discussion, but it is very much in line with the patterns I've been noticing all throughout the country. The richer the city is, the more people that are buying Switch 2s. This was not the case during the launch of the PlayStation 5. This is usually not the case with the launch of any technology, or really anything that's filled with hype, because people will find a way to buy these things, and if they don't find a way to buy these things, other people are willing to drive to the quote-unquote shady areas, because they know they're not going to get it otherwise. Now, I've said this a bunch of times, my experience is arbitrary. There are plenty of people saying I cannot find one anywhere. I'll tell you the stores all around me still have a lot of them in stock, and the ones that don't sold out well into the weekend. And I know this because I've had a busy few days. Not like just Switch 2 stuff, like the usual gotta stop by a store and grab something, and since I'm there, I check and ask. Like yesterday. My wife had to pick something up from Target. While she was there, I told her, ask the person at the front desk if they have any Switch 2s in stock. And she said, you just missed the last one. And just in general, like I have friends I know that are going out to buy Switch 2s. I have a lot of group chats that are very active, and people send pictures when they go out to places, and I'm just kind of sometimes asking them that if they don't mind, ask the person if they have Switch 2s in stock, just because I'm trying to keep like a mental note of how long this is going on for. I'm obviously very invested in this. Aside from that, I've done my own personal research just because I was kind of intrigued since I was noticing patterns where people in wealthier areas were selling out and then the lower income areas were taking much longer to go. So yeah, I made about 10 to 15 phone calls. I'm not going to sit here and throw out a chart and make a case study on this, but the patterns for the most part have been consistent with what I've observed. And again, it wasn't like this with the launch of the PS5, in part because everybody was laid off and people were getting unemployment and receiving a stimulus check, grabbing their tax returns and using that to buy a PlayStation 5. Yeah, I gotta imagine a lot of people just needed something to put in their kids' hands so they can leave them alone for a very long time, while others were like, I might die tomorrow, I want a PlayStation 5. But realistically speaking, the Switch 2 has more in stock. A lot more in stock, actually. Like, I think there's no comparison. So Switch 2's being available, that doesn't necessarily mean they haven't broken a record number of sales. Again, I think that's entirely possible and to be expected. If anything, I think if they don't break a record number of sales, it's kind of embarrassing. Like specifically that opening launch window in the first few months. Because it's a clear sign that you had something very, very good and completely dropped the ball going forward. You had a tap-in and missed the open goal. But yeah, the vibes I'm getting so far is that this is not going as well as they anticipated. I've been getting those vibes for a while. You guys remember a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago, where in a shareholders meeting, President of Nintendo, Furukawa, stated that they would combat scalpers by having enough units available so that everybody who wanted one could buy one, or something along those lines. And then in a follow-up interview, he said, very foolishly I might add, that they are surprised at how high the demand is because of the high price point. Which tells me that going into the launch, they hadn't made enough Switch 2s to combat scalpers. But clearly, this Switch 2 has been very, very bad to scalpers. I'm literally checking OfferUp at the time of recording, and all of the Switch 2s that were listed at $700 to $800 a couple days ago are now listed at $650. This means they're not selling. They're dropping the prices because they know that the Switch 2 units are not moving. So if you haven't made enough Switch 2s to meet demand, but you made enough Switch 2s to beat out the scalpers, that implies that the Switch 2 is not that high in demand, or at least not to the demand that Nintendo expected, because they haven't sold out. Now, here's the funny part. Here's how things are being reported. Sorry guys, I know a lot of times people really want me just to put timestamps in there so I can get straight to the point, and I don't realize sometimes that I go on for 5 minutes about something before I actually get to the point of the video. So hopefully I'm gonna remember to put a timestamp or a bookmark on this one. As it stands, many people are already gladly out there shouting that the Switch 2 has had record-breaking numbers. And I was wondering where all of this was coming from. So, you know, being the Nintendo enthusiast that I am, I decided to dig around a little bit more, jumping on the Googles and making some searches. Figured out a few things, and they primarily come from two sources. One of them popped up on the front page of Our Nintendo, an article by the world-renowned, illustrious techcrawler.com, which I could be living under a rock, but that was the first time I've ever seen that website, so make of that what you will. GameStop confirms record-breaking Switch 2 launch day across more than 2,000 stores. This actually kind of prompted yesterday's video about grifters, because the first comment under that post on Reddit is, I think my favorite thing I've seen from the Switch 2 doomers was a guy who made a 10-minute video on YouTube about Nintendo making Switch 2 sold-out signs to give stores and claiming their manufacturing hype because of it. And even though he didn't say Nintendine in that post, I cracked up so much reading that comment that I went to my wife and had to show it to her. And I will double down. I stand by my belief that Nintendo is manufacturing hype for this thing by creating sold-out signs and sending them to stores before they even start selling Switch 2s. Something that in general is not common in this industry, because people want you to think you can always buy something, unless you're trying to generate hype. But in that thread, I did see somebody post that Nintendo bought a Switch 2, and that's kind of what prompted yesterday's video. But okay, let's fix up my focus. TechCrawler.com says that GameStop is confirming record-breaking Switch 2 launch day across more than 2,000 stores. So this says a lot about the world. Number one, this post immediately gets upvoted, and it is like at the top of Our Nintendo for a long time. It was posted like 20 hours ago at the time of recording, and it's still in the top 3 or 4 posts. Which tells me most people don't click on stuff, they just see headlines and you know how it is. They go straight to the comments and start talking whatever they want to talk. This is not abnormal behavior, this is pretty much the standard for the world that we live in. But if you notice, and you click on the article itself, they said record-breaking Switch 2 launch day across more than 2,000 stores. They didn't say launch day sales, they said launch day. They said that GameStop has released a very interesting video confirming that the Switch 2 has already become a record-breaking console in terms of numbers. Numbers of what? Numbers of Switches sold? Numbers of vapes and snapbacks during a console's launch? Well, if you continue reading, they say that at this point we don't have exact numbers. We do not know how many consoles have been sold, but GameStop has confirmed that it had a very successful launch day across more than 2,000 of its stores, which is enough for them to consider it a record. Again, a record of what? A record of console launches being successful? Because I think that's what they're talking about. And then you see the tweet that they shared, and it's just like a video of some dude dancing. And again, I must be living under the rock because I have no idea who this is, but apparently he's very popular and people are just like wooing him on. And it shows a long lineup outside. And of course it did. Millions of people bought the Switch 2. That's factually correct. People in every single city in the United States, if the Switch 2 is available, I am willing to bet money that thousands of them bought a Switch 2, if not dozens or hundreds of thousands, depending on how big the city is. But the video doesn't show anything about record-breaking sales. So at that point, I decided to Google GameStop record-breaking sales. First thing I figured out was that they were stapling the screens of the Switch 2s, and that is funny as hell, on so many levels of incompetency. First, why is the Switch 2 face up in the box in the first place? Second, why are you ruining the box that somebody is buying a console from and stapling it? And third, how hard down are you pushing down on that staple that it's going and scratching a damn screen? What is... Oh, okay. Back to focus. Eventually, I saw a website, GoNintendo.com. I've heard of that one. The rock I live under is not that big. GameStop celebrates record-breaking Switch 2 launch across 2,000 plus stores. And here we go. GameStop marked the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 on June 4th with one of the biggest retail events in their history. Over 2,000 stores transformed into fan-filled launch parties nationwide. From DJs and cosplay to a surprise appearance by Nintendo of America CEO Doug Bowser at the Union Square flagship, the midnight release brought out the full force of the gaming community. And they have that same video with that content creator dancing. So yeah, the record-breaking situation here is that more than 2,000 GameStops threw a party, and people went to the party. And then you go back to the TechCrawler website, and they said, again, after that tweet, as we said, we don't know how many consoles have been sold, but having more than 2,000 launch day parties certainly seems like a success. And with such a record-breaking number of stores, the sales were surely great as well. Yeah, that's the news, guys. If you throw a party for free, people will show up. Get a DJ, pass out some pizza, throw down some Super Mario Brothers jamming tunes in the background, and bam, party. Successful launch. Record-breaking parties hosted for GameStop. Now, that's just one of the things that I've seen pop up. The other one, once again, came out on the top of Reddit. Switch 2 making sales history, moving 3 million units in 24 hours, according to Ninty Prime. Now, this kind of annoyed me because now I have to watch a Nintendo Prime video, because if I don't watch his video, I don't know exactly what he's saying. And by watching his video, it completely ruined my algorithm now because I have a ton of people glazing over the Switch 2 just all over my homepage, and I don't enjoy that. So I just, gotta go through the whole cleanse situation again, click do not recommend a few times, watch some of my more favorable topics for a couple of days, and let the algorithm fix itself. But anyway, so apparently he's heard from 3 different people that Nintendo have globally shifted 3 million Switch 2 units. I don't know what globally shifted means, genuinely. Like, I'm not sitting here just trying to sound dumb. I watched his video, and in his video, he never said Nintendo sold 3 million units. He said that Paul Gale has a source about sales of the Nintendo Switch 2 from their podcast the night before, which was a 4-hour-long podcast, and I was not going to watch that. So I don't know what Paul Gale did, but if somebody could figure it out, that'd be great. I would love to know. Because all I got from Nintendo Prime's video is that Paul Gale said he has sales numbers, and then after that he says that 2 other people have called him and verified the story. What story? I don't know, because immediately after that he says, I have not seen the data, but Paul Gale is very connected and he's very good with sales numbers. I even checked the sources in his description of that video, and it links to his own Twitter account as a source. Yes, his source on his website for how good the Switch 2 launch is going is his own Twitter page. And in that Twitter page, he says that 24 hours launch sales is that he's heard from 3 independent people that Nintendo have globally shifted over 3 million Switch 2 units. Now, you know what I would not be surprised is if that Nintendo is selling 3 million units worldwide for their launch. Maybe something like that, for example. I even wouldn't be surprised if they were selling and shipping out 5 million units worldwide. Maybe even the Bloomberg estimate from a few months ago of 6 to 8 million Switch 2 units sold at launch is an indication that there are a lot of Switch 2s being sent out, and that's why there's so many in stock. Like, something like that I could believe. That would be record-breaking. I agree. But what does shifted mean is not being clear. Again, intentionally vague. It means they sent out Switch 2 units to stores, 3 million. Is that what you're confirming with the details? Somebody show me the data. Oh, there probably is no data. That's why. It's all full of crap. It's the opening weekend. Nobody knows yet. Not even Nintendo. And then he goes on and talks about how no console has come close to that level of sales in 24 hours. Yeah, not even the Switch 2. And if it has, nobody knows that yet. But regardless, people are going to eat this right up. And it makes Nintendo's job of manufacturing hype so much easier when you have people out there manufacturing the hype for them. Again, you don't actually need to put in that much effort. All you gotta do is light the flame and the fire will burn on its own. Nintendo BSing about all of the demand about the Switch 2 is enough to make the fans just continue to just spread that information as far and wide as they can. It could be true, it could not be true. But don't come out and try to mislead people. Like, look, here's the thing. People like Nintendo Prime, like, they got massive followings. They got huge numbers. I am nothing in comparison as far as a YouTube personality goes. But just with, like, minimal research, I don't think my channel is that much different than theirs. I talk about my hunches. I make estimates based off of just personal experiences and my own arbitrary minimal stuff, as well as Nintendo's history. But at the end of the day, there's one thing that I know, and it's that I know nothing. I just assume a lot of things. And it seems like a lot of these big YouTubers are the exact same thing. They don't know anything. They just find 1 or 2 things and then shift around the words a little bit to mislead you into believing what they want you to believe, to send their message out, to get the engagement, to get the clicks, to get more and more sponsorships. This is funny. That's what it takes to be successful on YouTube. You just gotta make some crap up. Like, watch this. Hey guys, my friend who has really well connected and really knows his stuff told me that the Nintendo Switch 2 was available at least 450 stores around the country. I don't got the data to back it up, not yet, but he knows people who have told him that work in retail, and they've all told him that the Switch 2 at least 450. Now this could mean 451, this could mean 4,000, we don't know. But at least 450 stores around the country still have Switch 2s in stock. What did you guys think? How'd that sound? I'm trying to be a bigger YouTuber, so, practicing a little bit. Okay, sorry. I've had enough fun for one day, and I think I'm starting to be mean to people. But I actually don't mean this in a mean way. I don't mean that Nintendo Prime is not a good YouTuber, but I think people have to be very careful about sources online. They have to be very careful and understand that they're watching people who are out there to entertain, out there to get engagement. And that includes me. I mean, I speak the way that I speak in order to deliver my message. I put the background music that I want in the back of my videos in order to help convey that message to keep you engaged and enticed throughout. There is always a level of psychological manipulation because you want to keep people entertained. You want to keep people engaged. Even if you're doing a boycott, even if you're reporting about sales numbers, even if you're making a review. That's just the reality that comes with the whole YouTubing circle. And it's one thing to say, I saw this person in their video say this and I enjoyed it. But it's a whole other thing for a crowd of people online to believe that a console has sold well with record-breaking numbers, with the source being their YouTuber who uses himself as the source. That's where the problems start to arise. That's where the misinformation starts to spread. YouTubers are not valid sources of information. I've gotten things wrong about the Switch 2's launch. I've gotten things wrong leading up to the Switch 2's launch. But I know where I stand. I got that information because somebody said to somebody else who said to somebody else who said that they spoke to Nintendo, and then there's articles online and they end up on Reddit, and then it comes out of Nintendo's mouth. I am not a reliable source. Do not use me as a reliable source. I have no connections. I'm just a Nintendo dude that shares his opinion online. That's it. I want to make that very clear. And based off of my minimal and limited research, it seems like that's what all of these YouTubers are for the most part. So yeah, if you're hearing about the Switch 2 having record-breaking numbers, I don't think we're going to find out for another few days. I think they usually do forecasts after 1 week in Japan, at least, so we might get some numbers early on at that point. But again, I'm a YouTuber. I have no idea. Do not use that as a source. I just saw a comment where somebody mentioned that. But I do wonder if that's only going to be Japan numbers. And if that ends up being Japan numbers, can that apply to the whole world? Like, is it going to be the same proportions if the Nintendo Switch in Japan was significantly cheaper? There are a lot of question marks here, and you can bet that I'm going to be covering this. Also, for the record, I'm not out here to attack other YouTubers and attack websites. The issue is that they have to come up in the conversations because people are quoting them and it's ending up at the top of your search on Google. So when that happens, I gotta talk about it. If somebody is searching Switch 2 sales numbers and the first posts are Reddit posts and you click on those Reddit posts and it's a thing of Nintendo Prime and an article with a comment that says Nintendo and Dreamcast guy are grifters, like, yeah, at that point, I kind of got to talk about it. But don't expect me to be a hate YouTuber where I have like a picture of these people's faces with like a thumbs down arrow or something. Like, that's not what I'm doing. If it's not relevant to my conversation, I'm not going to go out of my way to make a video about how this YouTuber is this or that. And okay, I'll close off with this. So yesterday I made a comment that if I ever post a video with myself staring into the camera and apologizing, that's when, I'm just seeking attention and being ingenuine and doing it for the clicks. And everybody assumed that I was talking about some ordinary gamer. And I had no idea that he had done that because I don't watch his stuff. So then it looked like my entire video yesterday was calling him a grifter, which was not my intention at all. And yeah, no. My whole video yesterday was because I saw my name pop up on the top comment on Reddit of people saying that he sold out and bought a Switch 2 and was a grifter. And as I was scrolling through it, I was being associated with some other people that I may or may not have mentioned in this video. So yeah, that was just a happy coincidence. Oops, my bad, Mr. Ordinary Gamer. But in fairness, you shouldn't have bought the Switch 2, dude. Either way, thanks you guys once again for joining along, and I will catch you on the next one.